to be respectful of everyone's time, so we can go ahead and get started as more people join us as we get started here. So my name is Giselle. I am a water use efficiency specialist at Alameda County Water District, and I'd like to thank you all for joining us this evening for our first fall landscape workshop of 2024. These workshops are offered in partnership with BOSCA, the Bay Area Water Supply and Conservation Agency, and we host these every spring and every fall of every year. And so today, our landscape workshop will be on rainwater harvesting and designing rainwater systems for your landscape, rainwater catchment systems. And so I'll start off by just providing a brief background about Alameda County Water District, BOSCA, and some of the resources that Alameda County Water District offers customers who live in our service area. Then we'll jump right into a great presentation today that will be presented by Chris, and we'll wrap up with some time for Q&A. And so this is a Zoom webinar. Everyone is muted by default, but we do encourage you to ask questions if you have them. So you can go ahead and enter any questions you'd like using that Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. As we go through the presentation, we'll be monitoring for questions. But if you would like to speak your question, please wait until the end for our Q&A session, and we can go ahead and unmute you and you can verbally ask your question. This webinar is being recorded, so we will go ahead and send out the recording of it once it's available to everyone that registered. All right, so Alameda County Water District, our mission is to provide a reliable supply of high quality water at a reasonable price to our customers. Next slide, please. So our district serves the cities of Fremont, Newark, and Union City, and we were founded back in 1914. So we have over 100 years of providing service to our customers. We serve about 344,000 customers and have over 87,000 connections. And we do have a diverse water supply portfolio. So we have water supply that is local as well as imported. So about 40% comes from our local Alameda Creek watershed, 40% is imported from the California State Water Project, and about 20% is imported from the San Francisco Hetch Hetchy system. Next slide. All right, so on this side, we have the district's water use efficiency programs that are offered to our residential customers. So we have a lot of great programs you can take advantage of, like free water conservation kits that have low flow shower heads, low flow faucet aerators that you can install in your home. We have a rebate for replacing your grass with water efficient landscape. And then I do want to focus on a rain barrel rebate, since today's topic is about rainwater harvesting. So we offer a rain barrel rebate. It's $50 per rain barrel that you purchase and install in your home, up to a maximum of 2 rain barrels per customer. So you can receive a maximum rebate of $100 for installing 2 rain barrel rebates, 2 rain barrels. And you can apply for this if you go to our website, acwd.org/rebates. It is retroactive, so you would go ahead and purchase the rain barrel first, keep the receipts, send us the receipts and photos of the rain barrel installed, and then we'll go ahead and provide you the rebate. Our website has some key requirements. The barrel must be at least 50 gallons and some installation requirements. It can't be blocking pathways for safety. It has to be on the level foundation, etc. And you can review those on our website. I'll put our website in the chat, and you can, let us know if you have any questions about it. But if you're considering installing a rain barrel, especially after today's workshop, it's a great resource to check out our rebate. And we have a lot of other landscape related rebates as well, like irrigation hardware rebates if you're upgrading sprinklers in your landscape, if you find a broken one. So All of that is on our website as well, acwd.org/rebates, and I'll put that in the chat in a bit. Next slide. All right, so as mentioned, these workshops are offered in partnership with BOSCA, the Bay Area Water Supply and Conservation Agency, that represents 26 agencies in the Bay Area that include cities, water districts, water company, and a university. And what ties them all together is that they all purchase water from the San Francisco regional water system. Like I mentioned, we get about 20% of our water supply from that San Francisco system. And BOSCA member agencies provide water to about 1.8 million people and over 40,000 businesses and community organizations in the Alameda, Santa Clara, and San Mateo counties. And their goal is to provide a high-quality supply of water at a fair price. Next slide. So BOSCA and their agencies offer a lot of different webinars. Here's a list of upcoming webinars. And if any of these topics sound of interest to you, like learning about tree maintenance, or learning about gray water, you can go ahead and register, just like you register for this one. The link is on the screen there. If you go to the BOSCA website, bosca.org, you can find the information for these different workshops and register if any of these sound interesting to you. We are actually having, as I mentioned, this is our first workshop, so we're having another one later in the month that you, if sounds of interest to you, please, I encourage you to check it out, and I'll have more information about that later on. All right, so today, as mentioned, we're talking about rainwater harvesting and creating efficient outdoor water use. Outdoor water use is an important thing to focus on because it represents a very large opportunity for water conservation in the BOSCA service area. And outdoor water use reduction through the use of water-efficient plants and innovative techniques can help conserve water and ensure that future water supply needs of our communities are met. And just quickly, a quick disclaimer, this presentation is general in nature. It's not intended to be an exhaustive review of the subject matter. The information contained in this presentation doesn't necessarily reflect the policies of Alameda County Water District, BOSCA, or other member agencies. And the presentation, instructor information, products and materials are provided as a courtesy to participants and not endorsed by the district, BOSCA, or other member agencies. Next slide. All right, so as mentioned, we have a second workshop coming up this month. This one is in person. It is titled Rethink Your Lawn, Creating Water Efficient and Climate Resilient Landscapes. So it's all about converting and transforming your lawn into a water efficient landscape and how to go about doing that process. And it's taking place Saturday, October 26th from 10 a.m. to noon at the ACWD headquarters on South Grimmer Boulevard. And you can register. It is free. It's a free workshop, but we do require that you register. And you can register on our website if you go to acwd.org/calendar. All right, another announcement, another district event. Imagine a Day Without Water is an annual celebration. And so this year, on Saturday, October 19th, the district is hosting tours. So in recognition of the 10th anniversary of Imagine a Day Without Water, the district is offering guided behind-the-scenes tours of Water Treatment Plant 2. And you can see the process used to treat more than 25 million gallons of water daily, ensuring the safety of your drinking water if you live in our service area. So it's taking place Saturday, October 19th, starting at 9 a.m. Registration is required. Each person must register because space is limited. Please note that this is a walking tour that does require climbing stairs. And we do have minimum age requirements for attending the tour. So if you are interested for more information and to register, you can follow the link on the screen. I'll put these links all in the chat as well, so it's easy access, but this is a great opportunity to learn more about how exactly the district gets the water to your home. All right, so if you have any questions about Alameda County Water District's water use efficiency programs, please feel free to call our water use efficiency team at the phone number on the screen or email us at the email address there. We're more than happy to answer any questions you have, provide suggestions about how to conserve in your home, or walk you through any of the rebate application processes. All right. And without further ado, I will go ahead and introduce our instructor for today's workshop, Chris Corvetti. Chris moved to California as a member of the Watershed Stewards AmeriCorps program, where she delved into issues surrounding water conservation specific to the Bay Area. Since the end of her AmeriCorps service in 2017, Chris has worked with numerous local nonprofits and municipalities to install rainwater harvesting systems throughout the Bay Area. So we're very lucky to have Chris with us today to share her expertise and extensive knowledge. And yeah, thank you, Chris, for being here with us today. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Okay, everybody. So we're going to talk a little bit about harvesting rainwater, specifically using rain barrels and rain gardens to do so. I kind of like to start a little bit broader with the big questions, like why? So why harvest rainwater? Rainwater is great for your plants. It's great for your landscaping. It's great for your water bill. It's also great at reducing polluted runoff. There's a lot of pollutants that can end up in our water system and in our creeks, and they can affect our fish and our natural landscape and our natural ecosystem. So kind of like to start there with the nice thing about how stormwater runs. A lot of people don't realize that all of our stormwater, all the rain that comes down and hits our hardscape, our houses, our streets, and runs down into the gutters and down into the sidewalks, goes into a storm drain. Those are the grates that you see in the side of the road. They often say, don't litter, no dumping, flows to bay, flows, directly to the ocean, depending on where you are, flows to creek. And what that means is that water is not getting treated at all. So as you can see in this picture, all of that runoff water is coming down into the storm drain, and that goes straight out into our waterways without being treated at all. The different type of treatment, which you can actually tour this plant later this month, which is really cool that Alameda County Water District is offering that as part of their Imagine a Day Without Water, is our sewer pipes actually go to a water treatment plant. So all of the water that we use within our house and our sinks, our toilets, our showers, that gets run into a sewer pipe, that gets treated. By the time that comes back out into the bay, that's been cleaned. So what we're going to talk about today is trying to reduce polluted runoff, which is not the water inside our house, it's the water outside of our house that goes into our landscape, but also runs down the streets, especially when we get those big flashes of storms. So one of the ways that we can do this is a process called slow it, spread it, sink it. Slow it, spread it, sink it is a way to reduce the amount of water that's running off and thus reduce the amount of pollutants that water can carry. So if we can slow the water down, spread it out, and let it sink into the ground, it will help build up our water table. It will help keep the pollutants from running into the creeks and concentrating and harming our fish and wildlife. So one of the ways that we can do this is rainwater harvesting, which is why we're here to learn about that today, as well as ways that it can help you in your own house. The big question that I get a lot is, well, I live in the Bay Area, is there really enough rain to make this worth my time and worth the effort of installing this new system in my landscaping? And the answer is absolutely. I wouldn't have a job otherwise. There is absolutely enough water. 1,000 square foot roof can capture over 600 gallons of rainwater from just 1 inch of rain. So I've got this great equation here. If you didn't get it written down, I'm going to have it on the next slide. Here's our equation, and let's take a look how that works in real life. So that means if our normal storm event, like we often get where it kind of sprinkles a little bit, rains a little bit and stops, is about a ½ inch. I'm not talking about those big 7-inch storms that we had last year, which were just a little crazy. But on average, we get these nice little ½ inch storms. So with a ½ inch storm, 1,000 square foot roof could capture over 300 gallons. And what does that mean for Alameda County? Well, Alameda County has interesting landscape, and geography. So you get a really funky effect where areas in northern Alameda County actually get more rain than parts of southern Alameda County. And that difference is up to 9 inches a year on average. So I'm going to put both those numbers in here. So if we look at northern Alameda County, we get up to about 23 inches of rain on average, which the US average is 38 inches a year in precipitation. So definitely Bay Area less than the average throughout the United States, but northern Alameda does a little bit better. So that's over 14,000 gallons of water that would hit that 1,000 square foot roof. Now, southern Alameda County gets a little bit less, about 14 inches a year. That's still over 8,000 gallons of water. So it is still a lot of water that can be harvested and stored and put to better use than running down our roads and into our storm drains. So it's significant. Now, there's different types of roofs, and roofs will have different amount that they can harvest. A lot of times with flat roofs, you may not have a gutter system, but you do have some downspouts, so you'll still be able to harvest some water, but you might not be able to catch 100% of the water that falls on that roof. You can harvest rainwater from most roof types that are used in the Bay Area. The ones that you want to avoid are treated metal, or are untreated metal roofs. You want to avoid anything that's galvanized or untreated. You'll sometimes have untreated copper, or other untreated metal roofs. They often rust, and you get those metal oxides concentrated into your rainwater system. So we don't want that. And then you also don't want treated wood, cedar, or shake shingles. If you're treating them annually with an herbicide or a pesticide, the rain is going to collect some of that and concentrate it into a rainwater harvesting system. And we don't want to concentrate that because your plants will not thrive if they're being treated with an herbicide or a pesticide. So we want to make sure we're only using untreated wood, cedar, or shake shingles. Solar panels are, more and more common now, and a lot of people ask me if it's okay to harvest the rainwater off of them. It is. You want to check with your manufacturer and just make sure that they don't have any warnings about it, but most solar panels that are being installed today are completely safe. All of these other roof types listed here are safe to harvest from. The only time that you may want to disconnect your system is if you are getting a new roof put on. When you have a brand new, even if it's untreated, shake shingles, or if you have a brand new asphalt shingle roof, they tend to have a little bit of off-gassing and materials that will come off right when they're brand new. You get a lot of that gravel that comes off on the asphalt shingles. You don't want to catch that in your system, so you want to disconnect the system, then allow that to just fall, and you can gather that up and throw it away rather than having it concentrated in your rainwater. So there's all of these roofs are going to be great for harvesting water. So without any further ado, let's dive into talking about rain barrels, and we'll talk about rain gardens a little bit later. So rain barrels capture the roof runoff and store it for later use. It is a barrel. It is made to hold the water. It's going to eliminate or decrease your need for irrigating with municipal water. It is going to help reduce flooding, sewer overflow, and soil erosion around your home, minimizing moisture around the building foundation. And as we already discussed, it can help improve the quality of the water in the creeks because there's less water running off and picking up pollutants as it flows into the creek. It serves as a great educational tools for your neighbors and your local community. You do want to consider a few items when you're thinking about what type of system is going to be good for you. We're going to go through talking about different types of systems and sizes and all of these different aspects of it. But kind of what we're going to talk about is what your roof size is and your harvesting potential. So we've already looked at those equations and we've looked at calculating your harvesting potential. A little later on, we're going to look at how to measure your roof as well. You want to think about the number of downspouts and how many you're going to be connecting into the system. You want to think about how much space you have. And these points are all for a rain garden or a rain barrel, really. You want to think about that space. You want to think about that location. You want to think about the use of the water and where it's going to drain or overflow. And you want to think about aesthetics. How is this going to look next to your house? Where would you like to put the system that it's going to look nice and you're going to be happy when you see it every day? If you are artistic, I really am not, but I absolutely love this picture of a barrel that someone put this beautiful mural on because I think that would look amazing in front of my house. But unfortunately, I am not artistic enough to do something like that, and neither are any of my friends. So if you have that artistic talent, you can take a recycled food grade barrel and paint it to really look beautiful in your front yard. Or you can figure out other ways to make a system that blends in with your home. So let's talk a little bit about the anatomy of a rain barrel. I'm going to try writing in green on here. We'll see if this shows up okay. So you have your inflow. So your water is going to flow into your system from your roof, from your downspout. And in this case, you can see I'm zoomed in here on the left. This downspout's been cut. And then there is a thing called a leaf eater, which is this wonderful device, and that acts as screening. You do always need screening at the inflow. And a leaf eater can act as that, or you can just install screening at your inflow. This is what we call a full diverge for the water. The downspout's been cut, and all the water coming down the downspout is going to flow into these barrels. So we do have a question that just came in. I'm going to actually take a quick minute to answer this. It says, how about reusing above ground standalone small swimming pools? Is it okay to reuse them to store rainwater for a few months with cover on it? So I'm actually that's a really great question because I don't want to forget to do that. It is actually not legal to use garbage cans or pools or other things for the rainwater harvesting. The reason for that is mostly vector control. So this is exactly what I'm already talking about with the screens. We really need to have the ability to screen the inflow and the overflow and any other area where any mosquitoes or anything might be able to get into the system. And so we also have to consider a swimming pool is made to hold water. The question I get a lot of times is a garbage can. A garbage can is not made to hold that much water, and the water builds up pressure and they will burst over time. So it can be a safety issue. So using materials that are actually designed to be a rain barrel is really important. Not just vector control, but also UV control. Having the system so that you're not getting any UV light in them keeps any algae from growing on the inside and keeps your water stable for use. So we want to make sure that this water isn't creating or growing any bacteria. We want to make sure that it's not breeding mosquitoes. We want to make sure that we are keeping this water safe for use in our garden. Oops. Giselle, my screen just went yellow on me. Is it no longer sharing?
Oh, we can see the slide, the anatomy slide. You don't
Okay.
see anything? Or you?
Um, okay, well, we'll see if it,
Maybe if you reshare or
yeah, I don't know. Is there a chance you paused me?
hmm.
Well, I'm gonna keep talking about anatomy because I wasn't ready to move on anyway, but I'm not sure if it's gonna let me continue. That's really odd.
You stopped sharing and then and now it just has the, what do you see? Let's see.
I'm seeing the anatomy of the rain barrel slide.
Okay. Now it seems you stopped sharing.
How about now?
For me, it just says you started sharing and it's like a blank screen.
Okay, I'm very sorry, folks. I'm not sure. Let me try this.
There you go, it's back.
Okay, sorry about that. So you are now seeing the anatomy of a rain barrel slide again?
Yes.
Excellent. It went green again. So hopefully that's
Oh, okay.
um okay, so I'm gonna start this slide a little bit over. So we're talking a little bit about vector control and making sure that nothing can get into our system. And you really want to make sure your screens are in good health because I have seen systems that have had critters crawl into it. I've seen systems that are just, you don't want to have to deal with that. So keeping your system clean, keeping your screens in good shape, and using barrels that are sealed and made for this really does make the maintenance very easy and reduces the chances of anything like that happening. It is not fun to fish a dead critter out of a rain barrel. So hopefully my experience will teach you guys to really honor the vector control. Okay, so we've got our water flowing in through our screen. And then in this picture, it's coming down through a pipe and into the top side of the tank. So I'm going to use this green color since I have red arrows everywhere. I'm going to use this green color to draw on here. This particular system is daisy chained together. Daisy chaining is something that you can do with smaller barrels to create a larger system if you don't have the space for a large cistern. A cistern is a tank that is 200 gallons or more. And in this case, we're actually looking at 220 gallons in a daisy chained barrel system without needing to use a 200-gallon cistern. And we didn't have room for a cistern in this spot. As you can see, the window is just above these barrels. So we wanted to make sure that we weren't blocking the window. So this was a better system, was to be able to daisy chain. Now these are connected on the bottom. You can see these valves in between each tank. There are pipes connecting all of these tanks together. And then there are vents on the top of the 3 tanks that aren't vented to the inflow and overflow. So, but the combination of those vents and that connection plumbing means that as the water flows into the first tank, it will run through those pipes and it will simultaneously fill tanks 2, 3, and 4 as tank 1 fills up. So that's pretty cool because water seeks its own level. So by running the downspout into just one tank, we can fill in a whole series of daisy chain tanks. You can actually daisy chain cisterns together as well to get even larger capacity. Once these tanks are all filled, the water's got to go somewhere. So that's the overflow. And in this picture, it's up on this right-hand side. I'm going to clear my annotation so that I can start over. So our overflow is right here. And a zoomed in picture, you can see on the top right of the screen, there is screening at that overflow as well. So nothing can come up into the tank from the overflow. This overflow in this case runs out to a rain garden, but you want to be sure that you can see where that water is going. You need to make sure it's going to go onto your own property. So no matter how frustrated you get with your neighbor, you can't overflow your whole rain garden system, rain barrel system into your neighbor's lawn. You got to make sure you're at least 3 feet away from the property line when you run your overflow. This is not a Chris says, this is the state of California says, and it's also a requirement for the rebate, but it is a legal requirement to have one of these systems on your property. On these tanks, I use strapping. That's because this is on a community garden building in East Palo Alto. And so we do have a lot of people coming through. We have a lot of volunteers coming through, driving wheelbarrows next to the tanks. We wanted to make sure there was no way they could catch the tanks and knock them over or have a kid, let's face it, it's really not the kids, it's the adults, not have someone climb on top of a tank and have them fall over, especially if they're filled with water. Water weighs over 8 pounds per gallon. So if you got 55 gallons, or in this case, 220 gallons of water connected, it gets really heavy really fast, and you don't want that to be able to fall over. It's great for earthquake proofing and stability. So in this case, we did use strapping. The next part of the system is the output. So that's where the water is going to go. In this system, there is actually 2 points of output. There is a spigot right here, zoomed in on this middle picture on the right-hand side. That spigot will allow them to fill watering cans, or if they want to hand water anything. And that spigot will not work once the water level gets below the level of the spigot. So once our water level in all 4 tanks gets to about that point, that spigot's not going to work anymore. So at that point, they have a drip irrigation system that is coming out the bottom. And there's also a filter on that, which you're going to want anytime you're using a drip irrigation system. And that filter has a hose fitting on the end. So they could hook a hose on the end of that filter right there and be able to fill watering cans lower down until the barrels are completely empty. They can also just run the drip irrigation with their timer out to the rain garden. So that's all plumbed to run out to a garden. So that's a great way to think about that. Now, we do have a drip irrigation system on this barrel, and I have a question here, which, you know, I will cover as well, but the specific question is there a way to somehow connect these to existing sprinkler irrigation systems? And that is the tricky part. So as soon as you try to connect any of this to existing municipal water lines, you get into permit territory. And we're going to talk about permits later. But the simple answer to that is no. If you are going to set up a drip irrigation system for your rain barrels, you are going to install a new drip irrigation line. It does not take long. It's very easy to do, but you will have to purchase a drip irrigation line that is specifically designed for rain barrels or gravity systems. Gravity fed systems are systems with very low pressure compared to municipal water, which is all pressurized. And so you can order it online. I normally order mine through Home Depot. They come with the filter. They come with everything you need to connect to the system except the timer. So the only thing you would need to add would be a timer if you want it to run automatically. If you just want to put a valve on there and turn it on and off on your own, that actually comes in the kit. So the only thing you would need to buy separately was a timer if you want to automate the system. They are very easy to connect. They don't need any special tools. You can actually cut all the irrigation lines with scissors. You don't even need a special cutter. And the kit comes with everything you need. So it makes it very easy for you to install for yourself. And you can install it on top of and crisscrossing your existing irrigation system so that if your rain barrels run out and you want to run your municipal irrigation system, you know, especially like we've had this last couple of weeks, we've had some incredible heat waves in October, which, you know, is not really the standard. Your rainwater from the last spring is probably going to have run out by October. So that's when you're going to want to be supplementing that rainwater, especially if we get these big heat waves. So it's good. It's not an issue to have the two lines running. If you don't already have drip irrigation lines set up, and you want to continue to use the rain barrel systems, you can, you know, if you run out of water and you see it's going to be really hot for the next couple of weeks, you can refill your rain barrels with municipal water and use your drip irrigation so that you don't screw up your timer system to supplement that water that way. So if you don't already have a drip irrigation line set up from your household water, you don't need to set up two brand new ones. You can supplement with the existing rain barrel line. Hopefully that kind of talked a little bit more about drip irrigation. I do have just some pictures of timers on the next slide after this. I feel like we've already covered this a lot, but there are two different types of diversions. The one that we just looked at in that previous picture was a full diversion. That's like this picture on the upper right. There's also something called a partial diverter, where instead of cutting the downspout, you actually just drill a hole in the downspout. And the way it works is the water comes down on the inside of the downspout and it hits this little rubber gasket that you inserted in. The water comes through this hose and into your rain barrel. And then when your rain barrel fills, the water will actually stop and it will fill this whole hose until it comes back out to this rubber gasket. It will come up and over and down the middle and back down your downspout. These are really good if you already have an existing French drain, or if you don't have a huge flooding issue where your water is already going. Especially with French drains, this is great because you're able to pull out and capture as much water as you want, and then the rest of it goes back to where it would have gone. The other thing that you can do is bury a line from the bottom of your downspout into a rain garden. So once your rain barrel is completely full, all of that goes back into your downspout, but the downspout is now redirected into a rain garden, which helps you capture all the water from your roof, so you don't lose any of it by using a rain garden as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Okay, overflow. So we did talk about screening. It is required in both the inflow and the overflow. With your overflow, you obviously want that to be high up on the barrel. So if your inflow is at the top of the barrel, like this picture on the upper right, you would want to put your overflow as high as possible on the side, because if you were to put that overflow down low, you would not be able to fill water in this whole extra area above. The water is going to flow out where your overflow is. So I've had people ask me to come look at their system. They didn't understand why it wasn't working, and their overflow was halfway up the tank. And they said, well, I never get water in the top half of the tank. And this is why water is not going to go above the overflow. So you want to put your overflow as high as possible. You want to make sure you're connecting it on your own property. to a garden, a swale, a French drain, something where it's going to go back into the ground. So then looking a little bit closer at that output, if you're going to connect to drip irrigation or soaker hose, or a pump, you're going to need to put a filter on. Again, these filters are specific to gravity fed systems. You would not get the same filter that you would put on a municipal irrigation line. These are specific to gravity systems. They are a fine mesh filter. They unscrew in half right about here, and they are very easy to clean. You just need to take like a baby bottle brush to clean out the filter, and you do that about 4 times a year, and it works really well. I do mine about once a month, but the legal requirement is 4 times a year to clean out that filter so it doesn't build up. If you do want to add a pump, it again gets you into the gray area where we're going to talk about permits. If you hardwire a pump in, so it is always connected to electricity, it comes on demand, and it's always wired in, that's in permit territory. But if you have a pump that you just have a quick connect that you can, or you can screw it into the hose fitting on your system, plug it in, use it, unplug it, disconnect it from your system, put it back in your garage, that's fine. That's completely legal. You don't need a permit. You're just using it as needed. These systems will work better the fuller they are, because the weight of the water is going to add pressure to them. So the more water you have in the system, the more effective they will be at drip irrigating. In this upper picture, I have 2 images of timers that are used for drip irrigation. As you can see, they're very, very basic. They just have 2 knobs. Again, these are specifically designed for gravity fed systems. They're designed to not have a lot of pressure on the valve and to seal fully without that pressure. Some of the other ones actually require that water pressure to help keep them sealed. These are made to seal fully without that. You really do want to think about where you're going to use your water when you're setting up a rain barrel, because if your downspout is in the front of the house and your garden's in the back of the house, you know, where do you want to put that barrel that you can get the water from the downspout and get it to the garden? So it's not going to be very effective if you connect to a downspout on the front of the house and then you put you try to water something behind the house. You want to try to connect to a downspout that's closer to where you're going to use it, and think about how you're going to be using that water when you're setting it up. It's, great to use that water as regularly as possible. As we get into the rainy season, things will dry out a little bit in between storms. That's a great time to sink that water into the groundwater, to increase groundwater storage and to help maintain moisture in the soil, so that during the next rain, that soil won't have that hydrophobia, won't have that shock, and it will be able to absorb that water immediately. It is wonderful to be able to connect this to a rain garden. It's great for washing tools and using for stuff. This is not potable water. We're not going to be drinking this water. We are using this just for landscape needs. And as we already discussed, you cannot connect this to an existing drip system without a permit. So you're only going to be installing a new drip system with this. So we already covered that. Thank you guys for the great questions. The other question I get often is it possible to connect this water to a toilet for flushing? Yes, but again, you're getting into that permit area. So let's talk a little bit more about what gets you into that permit area and how we can avoid needing to get a permit and be able to just install this and get the rebate and have a wonderful rainwater harvesting system on our house. So you do not need a permit if you're plumbing it fully exterior to a single family home. So fully exterior, we're not connecting it to anything inside the house. We're not connecting it to toilets, laundry, anything. It is fully exterior. It is connecting to a downspout and to a garden. And if it's under 360 gallons, you can water however you want. You can use a hose, you can use a watering can, you can use buckets. If you go over 360 gallons and you have drip irrigation and you are not connected to electrical and you are not connected to a makeup water supply, you can go all the way up to 4,999 gallons without needing a permit. So that is a massive amount of water, a massive system. I can't imagine any of you guys getting that big of a system. But so the number to really remember is 360 gallons. And if you go a little bit over that, then you're going to just use drip irrigation. If you stay under 360 gallons, you can water however you want to water your garden, use it for your plants. If you decide you want to install a below ground system, which I did not really talk about in this presentation, because if you decide to go that route, you're going to be spending a lot of time with the planner, and you will probably learn a lot more about it than I know, because I don't install below ground systems. You do need a permit for them. If you want to connect to any interior plumbing, you're going to need a permit. If you want to be fully connected to electrical, you need a permit. If you want to hardwire a makeup water supply to automatically or manually refill your tank, you need a permit. If you want to hold a hose 3 inches, 6 inches above your rain barrel and refill it because it got empty in the end of August and you're about to have another heat wave, you do not need a permit to hold a hose over your barrel and refill it. You do need a permit if you are going to connect anything hardlined into municipal water, because they want to make sure there's backflow preventers and there's no way that this rainwater could possibly contaminate our drinking water. So that's where that regulation is coming from. Holding a hose over the barrel is completely fine. Maintenance is pretty straightforward and very easy for rain barrels. The really big thing is keeping those screens clean. You do need to clean your gutters twice a year. This is really good practice anyway. I found our neighbor had a really crazy dropping tree that came over one part of our house, so we actually had to clean it pretty much every storm or our gutters would overflow. But if you just have, if you don't have any big trees, the minimum requirement by the state of California is twice a year. You want to check and empty your leaf eater or your screens 4 times a year. So you will have screens, even if you don't have a leaf eater, you're going to always have a screen anywhere it's opening up. So if you're connected to, your drip irrigation, there's going to be a screen. That's your filter. Your overflow is going to have a screen. Your inflow is going to have a screen. So those are done 4 times a year. If you have a first flush diverter, which we didn't really talk about, they're really useful if you're in a very high dirt area, high dust area. You need to clean those twice a year, minimally. State of California requires, and I quote, that you visually inspect valves and components once a year. I find this a little bit funny because if you are installing this on your own house, I sure hope you're walking by it more than once a year and you're looking at it and going, wow, that looks like it's working great. But the state of California says visually inspect it once a year. Really, you should be just making sure all your valves work 4 or 5 times a year, 3 or 4 times a year. Every time you clean those screens, make sure the ball valves twist, make sure nothing's burst. We have had, even in the Bay Area, some of the ball valves burst and break. I prefer plastic ball valves now because we've had the brass ones break on us twice because we got cold enough that it had a frost and the water in there froze and it cracked the ball valve. You want to use that water every 5 years minimally. Realistically, if this is on your house, you should be using it after every storm and definitely fully using it up by the end of summer so that you're ready to capture for the next year. It's every 5 years or so, it is good to take a hose and just rinse out the tanks a little bit. They'll get a little bit of, just pollen and dirt and buildup in them, and you can just flush them out and run all that out so that it's ready to capture again for the next year. I've been using a lot of words like systems, barrel systems. And I have a question here that's a great question. It says, I have 5 downspouts. Hypothetically, if I add rain barrels to each of those, do they count as one system or 5 different systems? And that is a great question, because the answer is, well, it depends on how you do it. If you have 5 downspouts and you also daisy chain those 5 barrels together, so the water's running in from 5 downspouts into each barrel individually, but you have connected the irrigation lines to all 5 barrels, or you have daisy chained all 5 barrels together somehow, if the water commingles, it counts as one system. If you have 5 separate barrels and each one of them is being used for something different, they're not connected or plumbed together in any way, those are 5 separate systems. For the rebates, as Giselle mentioned, you can only get rebates on 2 of those. But you can do more, obviously, and they are all 5 separate systems. So if you want to put 300 gallons on all 4 corners of your house and you don't connect them, then those are each 300-gallon systems. Those are not a 1,200-gallon system, as long as you aren't running any plumbing between them. So that's a great question. You can buy rain barrels at online local hardware stores. There is a local place that sells them online. It's called Blue Barrel, and they sell well, these blue ones in the background that you can see up here. They are recycled food grade barrels. The one in front with the painting on it is a recycled olive oil barrel. Blue Barrel Systems has their own design, and they'll sell you the kits, they'll sell you everything they need, and they've made hundreds of videos on how to do it and make it very easy for you to do this yourself. The basic kits often come with the full kit. If you go with recycled barrels, you usually have to purchase the kit separately. Usually online, most hardware stores don't carry the kits. If you go with a cistern, anything over 200 gallons, they generally need to be plumbed without a kit. So you're going to have to spend some time in your hardware store picking out the plumbing parts to do what you need it to do. Urban Farmer in San Francisco and San Lorenzo Lumber in Santa Cruz usually have a decent selection of cisterns. Those are the suppliers I've used, but you can talk to other hardware stores to see if they would carry that for you. Basic kits can come with planters on top, like this first one in the background. That's an earth-minded rain station. Be careful with those. They've started selling them in 45 gallons. 45 gallons are not eligible for the rebate. They do sell the 50 gallons as well. So make sure when you purchase it, you're getting the 50 gallon. You can also get really funky ones that look like rocks or other decorative items that can blend in with your landscaping. Rain gardens. I'm going to move forward off of rain barrels, and I will take questions at the end. Rain gardens are a great way to capture and filter runoff from impervious surfaces to help recharge your local groundwater. If you use native plants, this can significantly reduce your irrigation needs. It supports wildlife habitat with native plants. And again, it's going to help reduce the moisture around your building, flooding, sewer overflow, and erosion. And for that reasons, it can increase your property value and enhance your landscape. And it's also a great educational tool for community members. So, wow, this is a garden and it's doing all that. What makes it different? How is a rain garden different? They are specifically designed to capture and store and infiltrate rainwater. Compared to a conventional lawn, they allow for 30% or more water to soak into the ground. They're usually designed with the native soil either removed or amended. So amended means mixing that native soil with something else, and we're going to talk about that on the next slide. Native plants help the rain gardens require less maintenance than a traditional garden, and they are designed to pond temporarily. So they're actually dry most of the time. It's not a pond feature, despite their name, but they do have the ability to fill up with water and let that soak into the ground. So here on the picture on the left, this is Half Moon Bay High School. Their science program reached out to me and we installed this system. It comes off of the science building. So the water's actually coming down a downspout over here and running up and into the barrel here. And then that barrel overflows into the garden. So all the water from that downspout will either go into this barrel or into the garden. Which is great because just off to the side here is a road that was constantly having dirt and contaminated water and everything flowing onto it, and it would flood regularly, and they've not had much of a flooding issue since we installed this garden, which, as you can see, is not a huge garden for a very large science building, but it really does help with that. Traditional rain garden anatomy is dug down, so you're actually excavating quite a bit in your yard. And I'm thinking green is not going to work anymore. Let me switch to red now. So I'm not sure red's going to show up either, but we'll try. You're going to dig down 12 to 24 inches. And then traditionally you'd have 3 different layers, but we are going to look at non-traditional rain gardens as well. Traditionally, you would have the bottom layer would be drainage rock, and you would do 3 to 6 inches deep or a little bit deeper even there, minimally 3 inches. Then you'd have a middle layer of bioswale soil, again, minimum of 3 inches, but you could go a lot deeper with that. And then on top of that, you would have river rock. And sometimes you could use mulch as well, depending on how much water you expect the garden to get. And again, you want a minimum of 3 inches deep there. So a minimally 3, 6, 9 is not 12. So one of those is going to be more while the others are a minimum of 3. This, you can connect it to a sidewalk, a driveway, a parking lot, a roof, bottom of a hillside, or a rain barrel overflow. Anything that's going to channel that water into your rain garden. You want to make sure that the water is sized appropriately for your house. We're going to look at sizing your rain garden in a couple of slides. You want to make sure that you are at least 10 feet away from your home and at least 3 feet away from the property line. So this means that if you have a very narrow front yard, if your front yard is narrower than 15 feet, it's not, you're not going to be able to put a rain garden in because you don't have enough room to dig out, 2 feet wide is going to be a very narrow swale, as opposed to a real rain garden. You want to make sure you have room to put some berms on the side to keep that water contained when it does temporarily pond. And you want to consider using native plants, which we're going to talk about as well. So this is our traditional rain garden. And then these are the basic rain garden requirements. So we did talk about 10 feet from the house. As you can see in this picture, there isn't any drainage rock in the bottom. So in this picture, we have the bioswale soil and then mulch. So you don't need to add rock into your garden if you don't want to. The rock allows the garden to hold a lot more water than the bioswale soil does, but bioswale soil will work. Bioswale soil is a sandy soil. It's got sand and compost, and you can mix that in with your native soil. So what you're going to look at is either replacing your native soil with that bioswale mix or amending your native soil with that bioswale mix. And you would really want to think about what type of soil you have how much clay is in your soil to make those decisions. The more clay in the soil, the higher percentage of bioswale mix you're going to want to mix into your soil. So most of our Bay Area soil has quite a bit of clay, and I go usually about 50-50. But if the soil has a lot more clay, it really, makes a ball, or you can do a ribbon test with it, then you're going to want to do more bioswale soil. So that sandy composty soil will help allow the water to soak in, whereas the clay will just get hard and hold the water. And we want to let that soak in. You do want to have some sort of erosion control at the inlet. So that is one spot where it'd be really good to have rocks. You can get, concrete splash guards or other splash guards to go there if you don't like the look of the rocks. I have a lot of families that have dogs or small kids that really don't want to add rocks into their yards. So they'll use some sort of a splash guard, or they'll bury the inflow line such that it's just under the surface in a valve box, so that it goes into the garden without being a trip hazard for the kids or the pets. You do want to have something, so even if you're downhill, you want to make sure you're building up that bottom end of the garden to make sure that it's high enough to hold that water. So you can build a berm on the lower side to excavate. The depth of the garden should always be at least 12 inches to 24. I've had people say, well, why not go down to 36? You really don't need to go more than 24 inches deep, but you do need to go at least 12 inches deep when you dig it out. And then that ponding depth, so above the soil, so where that mulch is and up into the air of your berm, needs to be at least 6 inches. You have to have at least 6 inches ponding depth just to make sure that that water has somewhere to go. Now, your water should not be sitting there for any length of time. If we are having rain after rain after rain, the water may not go away while we're actively having rainstorms. But once the rain stops, that water should all be gone within 3 days. If it's not gone, your garden may not be sized appropriately, or you may need to re-loosen the soil or amend the soil a little bit more, have less clay in the soil. So you do want to kind of keep track of how your garden's doing. Your roof area, this is recommended from Valley Water. These are their recommended roof area size to square foot of garden. Now, measuring your roof area is not your entire house. You're only going to measure the area you are diverting. So if you are going to divert, in this case, 2 downspouts on the front of the house, this dotted red line is the area that you would measure. If, however, I'm going to switch over to blue here. If, however, you wanted to only divert this 1 downspout and back of the house and put your garden somewhere over there, you would measure half of this roof on this side, and that would be the area that you would measure. If, like our question earlier today, you are thinking about putting in 5 separate rain barrels on these 5 separate downspouts, you would measure for each individual one. So this one would be the area for there. This would be the area for that one. This area here, I'm a little off on that line, sorry. That area there would be for that downspout, and we would split the back side of the roof in half for these 2 downspouts. So each downspout would get its own separate measurement to calculate in that original equation we looked at for the amount of rainfall and the harvesting potential. So hopefully that makes sense. I've got some plant recommendations, and we'll talk about plants and garden maintenance, and then we will open it up for Q&A. These are some native plants that I like to use in rain gardens. You do want to consider which plants are okay being kind of drowned a little bit during the rains and then drying up and being dry in the non-season. You want to consider which plants really don't like having their feet soaked and would rather be a little bit higher up. And then some plants are kind of okay either way. So these are just a small selection. Bosca has a really wonderful Excel spreadsheet that you can go to and you can sort by rain garden, and they list all the plants that they recommend and that they endorse for their rebates. A big question I often get is, can I irrigate edible plants with my rain barrels, or can I put them in my rain garden? So because our rain barrels do concentrate everything that hits our roofs, and we live in the Bay Area, we get a lot of forest fires, we get a lot of smoke from fires. The one that I like to use as an example is in 2020, we had a couple days where the sky was just orange and we all came out of our houses and there was ash everywhere on our cars. And there's a lot of chemicals in that ash. So we really don't want to be concentrating that into our rain barrels and into our food. So if we do have, a lot of ash, you can disconnect your rain barrel. But you also want to think about avoiding anything that has a lot of uptake. So avoiding those leafy greens, avoiding any berries that grow right on the ground, any leafy herbs, and any root vegetables. Anything that is going to be the part of the plant that you eat is going to be in direct contact with the water. Everything in this left column here, these are great. Any citrus, tall bushy, herbs and veggies, bushy berries, vining veggies, all of those, the roots and the stems are going to filter everything out for you. So those are the ones that you're going to do. You're still not going to put those in the swale of your rain garden. You can plant them on the berm and their roots will go in, but in the rain garden itself, we're going to stick to native plants and non-edible plants, just because of the ponding that can happen there. There have been studies done, especially in Australia, that show that the uptake in plants, including root vegetables, is insignificant and will not harm you. Again, I think that they just don't have the same conditions that we have in the Bay Area. So I do not recommend planting anything in this right-hand column to be irrigated with this. With anything you're irrigating with the rain barrels, you are going to be watering at the roots. You're not spraying the water all up over the citrus plant or all up in the raspberries. You're going to be watering at the roots so that you're not spraying it with anything that may be in your rain barrels. Garden maintenance is pretty straightforward. You want to drip irrigate during the dry months, especially when the plants are getting established. Weed is needed. Replace the mulch. That's kind of a specific one to rain gardens. You want to keep the mulch at least 2 to 3 inches thick. And you want to use like a harder mulch, a hardwood mulch rather than a microbark so it can't float away. If you see any areas of erosion, make sure you're repairing those as soon as possible so that they don't get worse, and avoid any synthetic fertilizers or herbicides in your garden. If you do have any extended ponding, like we talked about, you want to figure out what's causing that to mitigate it, because we do not want to be breeding mosquitoes or attracting any other pests. I'm going to open it up for questions now. I just want to remind you that Alameda County Water District works with Bosca for a $50 rebate for rain barrels and $2 per square foot of lawn replaced, up to $3,000 for a single family home. I believe that $3,000 includes any rain barrels rebates, so I don't think you can, if you do both, I think $3,000 is your max. Giselle, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong there. The rain barrel rebate, you do not need approval of. You send that in after you've installed them, and you send in the receipts and the pictures. The Lawn Be Gone rebate, you do have to have a pre-inspection and a post-inspection done. These are usually done virtually, but you do need to have approval before you do this. So don't get really excited, install your rain barrel, and then try to get that rebate. They will not approve it without prior approval. So make sure you go through that process before you do the installation. Some other great resources, as you saw earlier in the presentation. I'm just going to flip through some resource slides and leave these up to remind you guys about all these great resources and these websites where you can find them. Giselle, are you going to send out a follow-up email with some of these?
Yeah, definitely. That's
Okay,
the
I will
plan.
also send you some PDFs that I have that are great little quick reference guides for rain barrels and rain gardens that I've created.
Perfect. Thank you, Chris. Thank you so much for an amazing presentation. Um, and yeah, we had a lot of great questions throughout as well. But yeah, thanks for plugging our rebates. All of that is right. The only thing is that yeah, our rainbow rebate and our turf replacement rebate are separate. So you can get both. You can still get the maximum 3,000 and then in addition the $50 for the rain barrels. So definitely great resources to take advantage of if you're planning to replace your grass or redo your landscape. And then if you want to install those rain barrels as well. And yeah, I'll definitely send out these resources and the ones that you send me over, Chris. Um, yeah, does anyone have any questions? Feel free to type them in the Q&A or raise your hand if you prefer to. We can unmute you so you can state your question. Either option works. And I did also send some of the links that I had mentioned in my intro slides, like about our tour for our water treatment plant. If that's of interest, the links in the chat, as well as the link to our rebates page where you can learn more about our rain barrel rebate. Looks like we
There's
got
a
a
question
question.
here about posting the presentation on another website. I'm not sure what TCEC stands for. This will be posted on the Bosco website, and you're welcome to post the link to it on your website. It'll link to the Bosco's website.
I believe that's Tri-City Ecology. They're like a local organization here in
Oh, great.
Fremont.
Thank you.
So yeah, and I'll send out to everyone that registered, so all of you that attended provided your email, so you'll also get the link to the presentation. Once it's out, we send out that via email as well.
And I recommend going through the Bosco website for previous webinars. They have tons of videos on there for all different topics, and they are really, really wonderful. While you don't get the opportunity to ask the instructor questions live, there is a lot of great information in those presentations, and those are all on their website.
Yep, 100%. That's a great resource as well.
We have a question here. Any resources for examples on various ways to add rain barrels? I have a couple of downspouts which are not immediately conducive to due to their locations. You can using that partial diverter, you can run a line around a corner, you can run a flexi hose away from the barrels. I would recommend taking a look at that Blue Barrel Systems website. I think I have it on this last slide. If not, it'll be in the email. I don't have it on this last slide. Graywateraction.org has some really great resources as well. And Flows to Bay has really wonderful resources. So these are all great websites to look at for resources for the Bay Area and examples of systems that have been installed. My address will also be in the follow-up email. So if you do want to send me a couple pictures, I can take a quick look and just type back, what I see as possible options, just to help you get started with the process.
Awesome questions so far. Any more questions? You can raise your hand if you prefer to unmute and state your question, or again, you can type it into the Q&A. And I will also in my follow-up email include the contact information to our Alameda County Water District's water use efficiency team in case you have questions about any of our rebates or programs. You can reach out to us and we're happy to help.
Now I believe you said this at the beginning, you can apply for this rebate and get this rebate twice, is that correct? For two separate systems?
Yeah, so you can get up to the maximum is $100 for 2 rain barrels. So you can get 50 per rain barrel that you install. And yeah, you can apply for them at the same time. That's totally fine. We've had some cases where someone installs 1 rain barrel and then like a couple months later they want to install another, and that's fine as well.
And that actually leads into one other question that I often get that I didn't get tonight and didn't think to answer is how much do these cost? When you get into cisterns, they're a lot more expensive. You're generally looking at least $2 per gallon as you get into those bigger systems. But if you're looking at like the blue barrel system, these tanks are usually about $30 and the kits are about $25 to install them. So if you're just getting one 55-gallon blue barrel tank, and the system, you're looking at $50 to $60. So that rebate can actually sometimes cover the full cost or very near to that full cost, which is really incredible. If, however, you want to get something like the rain station, they used to be $50. They've gone up. They are currently closer to the $100 range. And then the other basic kits, the prices really vary, but the rebate can fully cover a recycled system like the blue barrels. We have a great question here. Are there any additional grants or funding programs available for rainwater collection in the Bay Area that I could apply for aside from the rebates mentioned? At this point in time, the only programs I know of are specific to East Palo Alto. Giselle, I don't know of any in Alameda County.
No, I can't think of any in Alameda County.
So right now I do know there is a program through Fresh Approach and Climate Resilient Communities and Grassroots Ecology have all teamed up to do a program for East Palo Alto residents. And that need is due to flooding in the area, but there are specific requirements of being in a flood zone to get that to be available for that program. There are also things Flows to Bay as well as Bosca and Valley Water sometimes will do sales where they purchase a certain number of barrels wholesale and then they sell them to community at a cheaper reduced rate. I don't know of any of those coming up right now, but they usually happen in November and December. So if you keep an eye on those websites, they may, oops, I'm trying to move faster and it's not going. Oops, let's see there. If you keep an eye on those websites, they may or may not show up with these reduced priced barrels. I think last year they did it in November.
All right. Any other questions? No, we're nearing time here. I want to thank you all for joining us this evening to learn more about rainwater systems in your landscape. It was a great presentation with a lot of great information. And I hope you all found it helpful and informative. Thanks to you, Chris, for spending your evening with us as well. It looks like we got a hand raised, maybe not. Bill, all right, we'll go ahead and unmute you. You can ask your question or.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. A question. This isn't directly rain gardens, but our neighborhood has, when it was designed, has swales where the water flows through from the downspouts to underground tubing out into the swale area. Is it legal if those are provided for people to just spray all the weed killer out there? Do we see people spraying pesticides? I mean, most of the neighbors use that area as just another area to spray pesticides.
Is it on private?
I don't know where, okay, it's the area between the sidewalk and the street, so it's probably,
So
we're
generally,
responsible for it. We get all the complaints about it.
yeah.
Oh,
So that's one of those weird things. Generally the area between the sidewalk and the road is both, has to be maintained specific, like the city has specific requirements for how it needs to be maintained, but it is the homeowner's responsibility to do that. And I mean, I'm not a fan of using synthetic pesticides for anything.
right. No, we
So
aren't either.
I can say I don't love hearing that. But I don't think there's any law against it.
I didn't think so. Just thought I'd take a chance. Thank you.
But it is a great opportunity to try to maybe educate your neighbors on non-synthetic pesticides and using more natural solutions.
Yeah, it's enough. We've had lots of opportunities. Yes.
I know it's not a fun conversation to have with neighbors. And I will say a lot of those swales often have storm drains in the middle of them, so they are made to allow the water to soak in, but to prevent it from overflowing into the street, they will have storm drains. So if it is possible to reduce the amount of water coming off of your property into those swales, that will help with the storm drains as well. So these rain gardens and rain barrels on your own property will still help, even if they're going into a swale on the other side of your sidewalk. Those can often overflow into a storm drain. So this is beneficial to try to keep that water on your own property and help it soak into the ground to help keep our groundwater recharged.
All right. Last call for questions as I wrap up. As mentioned, I'll send out a follow-up email with these resources, as well as contact information for Alameda County's water use efficiency team. So you can all take a look. And I want to thank you all again for joining us. Consider joining us for our in-person landscape workshop later this month on October 26th, if you're interested in learning about removing your lawn, transforming it into a water efficient landscape that's climate resilient, and significantly reduce your outdoor water use. You'll get a chance to look at our demonstration garden outside of our headquarters office here in Fremont. So yeah, thanks, Chris. Definitely consider joining us 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. And thanks again, Chris, for a wonderful presentation, for sharing all your knowledge and for providing those follow-up resources. I know everyone here today really appreciates it. And you know, they asked some great questions, so appreciate the engagement as well. And if
Thanks
there
for
are
having
no,
me.
yeah, and if there are no other questions, I think we can go ahead and wrap up. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your night. Thank you all. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Bye.